All right, so you ready to go deep? Like really deep.
Why don't you do it?
Today, it's a brand everyone thinks they know, Starbucks.
Ubiquitous, friend.
Totally. But from a single shop to, world domination, their story is way more than just lattes and loyalty cards.
Oh, absolutely. It's a masterclass in resilience. Because they messed up a lot on their way to the top.
Which honestly makes them even more interesting to study.
Exactly. Mistakes are where the good stuff happens.
Right. So we're going to uncover how Starbucks used their biggest blunders to fuel those massive wins. And maybe, just maybe, we'll all pick up some tips for our own journeys.
I love it. Learning from the best, even their worst moments.
Exactly. Okay, so rewind with me. It's 1971. Seattle, pre-grunge, pre-Amazon. Like, picture it before it was Seattle.
Totally different world. Coffee was different too.
Okay, so in Pike Place Market, amongst the fishmongers and everything, this tiny shop opens. Starbucks. But get this, it wasn't the Starbucks we know at all.
Nope, not even close. The three friends who started it, Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, Gordon Balker, they were coffee geeks, obsessed with quality beans. But their goal, getting people to brew at home.
Wait, seriously? Like, the opposite of a coffee shop.
Essentially. They were selling roasted beans, fancy equipment, even teaching customers how to brew, which, for a time when instant coffee was king, was pretty innovative.
Yeah, ahead of their time, but not exactly scalable.
Exactly. Huge vision limitation. They were niche, but no one was hanging out in cafes like we do now. That whole third place idea hadn't hit yet. It's a reminder you can be right about a problem, but totally miss on the solution people want.
Oh, good point. Which brings us to Howard Schultz strutting in 1982. He wasn't just a new employee, he was about to flip their whole script.
Total disruptor.
So Schultz joins as director of operations and marketing, but he's got this whole other vision for what Starbucks could be.
He'd just come back from a trip to Italy, blown away by their cafe culture. And he's like, we need to be selling brewed coffee.
Hold up. In a bean shop? That's like sacrilege. What were the founders thinking?
They were skeptical, to say the least, worried it would, cheapen their whole bean business.
Which, in hindsight, huge miss.
Major. This is where leadership clashes get interesting. It wasn't just coffee, it was a brand's entire identity at stake.
And Schultz was basically like, fine, I'll prove you wrong. Cue dramatic music.
Okay.
Because this is where Il Giornale is born.
Exactly. 1985, Schultz is out, starts his own thing, and it's everything he'd pitched to deaf ears back at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Italian cafe vibes, focus on community, and brewed coffee, obviously.
It's like the ultimate I'll show you move.
Total power move.
Yeah.
And guess what? It worked so well that Schultz ends up buying Starbucks in 1987.
Plot twist. Talk about betting on yourself.
Right. And that's when Starbucks, as we know it, truly begins.
With those three principles that are still their core today. The third place idea, the premium experience, and that consistent quality no matter which store you walk into.
The Starbucks DNA right there.
Totally. But we all know rapid success. It comes with its own set of problems.
It's almost inevitable, isn't it? That tension between staying true to your roots and, embracing growth.
Totally. So what were some of those early growing pains Starbucks faced as they started expanding under Schultz?
Well, one of the biggest, no surprise, was overexpansion.
Makes sense. Too much too fast.
Exactly. They were opening stores left and right, some in locations that weren't quite the right fit. And that rapid growth, it put a real strain on their resources, financially, operationally.
So they were sacrificing quality for quantity.
Kind of, yeah. Maintaining that consistent customer experience that Starbucks feel across thousands of stores. It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And there were definitely times when the quality, the coffee, the service, it didn't live up to the standard Schultz had built.
It's like that saying, grow slow or grow quick and die. Maybe not that exactly.
But you get the idea. They had to learn that the hard way.
Don't they always?
Yeah.
So what else? What other missteps did they make along the way?
Well, this one's a classic. Straying too far from their core. Mid-90s, they launched Starbucks Tea & Co., trying to capitalize on tea's rising popularity.
Okay, on paper that makes sense. Tea, coffee, they go together, right?
Totally. But they underestimated the power of brand association. Starbucks, at its heart, it was coffee. That's how customers saw them.
So even diversifying into something that seemed like a natural fit?
It backfired. Diluted their focus, detracted from their main thing. They learned a pricey lesson about staying in their lane.
It makes you wonder, what if they'd put that energy into, perfecting their coffee even more? Different brewing methods, food that paired better?
Right. Imagine the possibilities. But hey, that's business. Sometimes you got to stumble to find your footing.
Speaking of stumbling, let's talk 2008. The recession hits. How does a company known for, let's be honest, expensive coffee weather that storm?
It was a turning point, that's for sure. Suddenly, those daily lattes, easy to cut back on. And Starbucks, they felt it immediately. Sales plummeted, stock price tanked, survival mode.
And this is where Howard Schultz makes his big comeback as CEO, right? It's like a movie. The founder returns to save his creation.
It was a bold move, signaled he was all in. He knew they had to adapt fast.
Okay, so what do you do? Give us the playbook, because we could all use a comeback story like that.
Well, first, he acknowledged they'd lost their way. In all that growth, those core values, the quality, the experience, it had slipped.
They'd gotten away from what made them Starbucks.
Exactly. So Schultz, he makes some tough calls. Closes stores, lays off employees, gets costs under control.
The hard decisions no one wants to make, but sometimes you have to.
Absolutely. But he knew that wasn't enough. They had to reconnect with customers on a deeper level. This is where the day Starbucks closed comes in.
Oh yeah, legendary. February 2008. Every U.S. store shuts down for barista retraining. Gutsy move.
Insanely gutsy. But it sent a message. To employees, we're serious about quality. To customers, we hear you, we're fixing this.
It's like they hit the reset button.
Exactly. Back to basics. But they didn't stop there.
There's more. Okay, lay it on us.
Schultz knew they had to up their game, appeal to what people were craving, authenticity. So they doubled down on ethical sourcing, sustainability, social responsibility, showing their values weren't just about profit.
It's like they had to prove they were more than just a corporation.
Right. And this was also when they made that pivotal move into the digital world. Remember?
The app. The loyalty program. It seems so obvious now, but back then.
Revolutionary. They were early adopters, saw how mobile could transform the customer experience. But it wasn't just about convenience. It was about building loyalty, gathering data, getting personal.
It's amazing how an app can become such a powerful tool, not just for sales, but for creating a community.
Totally. And it worked. But, as with any success story, Starbucks wasn't done evolving. They'd conquered America, but the world was waiting. And going global, well, that came with a whole new set of lessons.
Okay, so picture this. Starbucks, they've ridden the wave, they're riding high, but now it's time to go global. Conquering America's one thing, but the rest of the world. Different story.
Totally different ballgame. You know, what works in Seattle doesn't necessarily fly in, say, Sydney.
Oh, yeah, Australia. That was a rough one for them. What happened there? Too much Vegemite, not enough Frappuccino.
It was more about underestimating the coffee culture that was already there. Aussies. They knew their coffee. Small, independent cafes, unique flavors. That was their thing.
And Starbucks waltzed in with the American playbook.
Pretty much. Figured the world wanted what they were brewing. By 2008, closed most of their Australian stores. Expensive lesson.
So what's the takeaway? You can't just plop a brand anywhere and expect it to take root.
Exactly. They had to learn to adapt, to become students of the cultures they were entering. China's a good example.
Oh, yeah. What'd they do differently there?
Think green tea drinks, local pastries. Even the store designs. They incorporated Chinese aesthetics. Showed they were paying attention.
So going global without losing your identity, but also complementing the local scene?
Nailed it. It's like when in Rome, but for coffee. In Japan, they partnered with local designers, the Starbucks there. They feel distinctly Japanese.
Smart. Recognizing that people appreciate that local touch. Okay, so they're figuring out this global game, but it's not like the challenges stop there, right? There's always that debate about globalization itself.
Right, the impact on local businesses, all of that. It's a valid concern.
Totally. So how does a brand like Starbucks balance that global presence with supporting local communities, local values?
It's a constant balancing act. They've made efforts, emphasizing ethical sourcing, working with local farmers, community initiatives, trying to be more than just a big corporation.
Showing they care about more than just the bottom line.
But let's be real, the coffee landscape today, even more competitive than when they started.
Oh yeah, way more crowded. You've got independent shops upping their game, chains like Dunkin' and McDonald's offering decent coffee for less. Even those fancy at-home brewing systems are getting popular. Right. It's like everyone's a barista now. How does Starbucks, even as the OG, stay relevant with all that competition?
They have to keep innovating. And not just with crazy new drinks. They're investing heavily in their digital platforms, using the app and rewards program to create personalized experiences. I even heard they're testing AI-powered recommendations.
Wow, AI baristas, that's wild. But it makes sense. They have to stay ahead of the game. It reminds me of that whole plastic straw thing a few years back.
Oh, yeah. Seemed small, but it became a big deal.
Total wake-up call. Showed even a huge company has to listen to its customers, even when it means changing how they do things.
And they did, right? Phased out plastic straws, introduced more sustainable options.
They did. And it wasn't just for show. They were one of the first big companies to offer those comprehensive benefits to part-time employees, too. Healthcare, tuition assistance. Made a statement.
Right. They're not perfect. No company is.
Yeah.
But they're trying to do better, which counts for something.
It does, and it all goes back to that idea of learning and adapting, Starbucks' story. It's proof that success isn't a straight line. It's about taking risks, messing up, but having the guts to learn from it all and come back stronger.
And that's a lesson we can all use, right? No matter what we're trying to achieve.
Truth. So there you have it, how a tiny bean shop in Seattle became the Starbucks we know today. It's a wild ride, full of ups and downs, but hey, isn't that what makes a good story?
Absolutely. And maybe even some inspiration for us along the way.
Now that's something to think about, maybe over a cup of coffee. Thanks for diving up with us today.